Hi, I'm Raina.
It's Jason.
We're Baguette Bound.
Today we're talking with Erik and Tara. I've known Erik for about 15 years. We used to work together. About 2 years ago, Erik and Tara, along with their kids, they moved to Spain. They quit their jobs. Erik was an accountant, Tara was a teacher. They left those behind and they went for a cultural experience in Spain for 2 years with their children.
We are excited to talk to them today and about everything from logistics, what they did about medical insurance and enrolling their kids in school, to just what the experience has been for their kids, for them. So I hope that you'll take a lot of inspiration from this interview, just like we did seeing them do this a year ahead of us.
Okay, thanks. Tune in.
Yay!
Hey.
Thank you guys for being with us today, Tara and Erik.
For having us.
Yeah.
Viewers are really going to enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, because you guys are doing something that is not super common at midlife and with two school-age kids. You're not like young single digital nomads, and you're also not retired in the traditional sense.
Yeah, how and when did you get this idea to kind of go live abroad with the family?
I guess it started back in, I want to say probably 10 years ago, maybe 2013 or so. We started kind of getting an idea. It first started to where we would maybe move somewhere else in the US. We were thinking West Coast. We wanted nicer weather. Being from Houston, we were kind of tired of the rain and the heat and humidity and everything. So we wanted somewhere where we can have 4 seasons and spend more time outside and all that. And then when the kids started school, they got in the dual language program in Pearland. So once we saw them kind of take off with Spanish, we wanted to keep up with that. And I thought one day maybe we could try to do a year or two in Spain. Did not think that Tara would go for it at the time, but so I presented it to her. I don't know if she was on board right away or not, but eventually she did get on board and we just worked towards that. Got derailed a little bit with COVID, but ended up in Spain, April 2021, mainly to take in the culture and for the kids to get better with their language skills, which, I mean, they're both, I think, basically fluent right now. They can definitely understand it and speak it way better than us. So mission accomplished there, and really no regrets. It's been great.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious, what was your hesitations when he said you weren't on board at first? What was that?
I don't really, it's been so long. I don't remember that I wasn't on board at first. I mean, I'm an art teacher, so hearing Europe and all the arts and history and culture, I mean, definitely excited about that. And one of my favorite artists is Picasso. Of course, he's from Spain. I think it was just, I think the biggest leap for me and the kids were leaving family. But other than that, I mean, leaving Houston was easy.
Well, we haven't been back.
We haven't been.
Wow, so.
Yeah, we haven't either. And we always say, we love you, Houston, but your weather, it's terrible. Yeah, totally.
So you've been there 2 years now. You've done Spain for 2 years. Kind of what's maybe the best part so far? The best part for you personally, and maybe the best part for the family as a whole?
I think the best parts really are just the whole culture change. And as far as just slowing down, I mean, it's a much slower lifestyle, relaxed lifestyle, family oriented, people outside. Southern Spain's constantly blue skies. And then just our neighborhood is historic and winding streets, very few cars, and just so different than what we knew in the US. I think that's one of the best parts for sure.
And I think we mentioned it probably at the outset, but you guys were in Granada, Spain. And you mentioned the kids had some Spanish going into this. How was you guys' Spanish? What was the language? What was it like adjusting to the language?
I mean, we had, being from Houston, you have some Spanish. And I took it in high school, which didn't do a lot, but I had some. And I think Tara was basically the same. We were very
I had
elementary level for sure. And even now, maybe, I don't know, we're not that more advanced yet. I think it's just harder when you're not, like the kids were in school with it Monday through Friday. It makes a huge difference. So we're kind of trying to do it on our own. We did take some classes. They were okay. I think they were a little overpriced for what we got, but so we're trying to do most of it on our own with Duolingo or just watching shows on Netflix or whatever. but definitely just being around it every day, hearing it out and about, you pick up things that you don't even realize at the time. And
Yeah.
hopefully within another handful of years, we'll be able to conversate in the language, but
Better,
we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah, it takes time. It just takes
It
time.
for
does.
sure.
Especially like you
Yeah.
said, when you're not, because our daughter's in school too, and she's hearing and interacting in it every single day, and we're not. So
Yeah,
it
her
just
French is
takes longer.
incredible.
Yeah. We had a list of sort of some logistical questions because I feel like there's two different things, right? When you're planning a big trip like this, there's like all the like the checklist of things. And then there's also the like, what's it going to be like? And so we've kind of divided our questions into those two groups, and we're going to go through a few of the logistic ones real quick and then come back to some of like what's it like. So medical insurance. This is a big one for Americans. We're like, what?
Sure.
What did you do about medical insurance? What was the Spanish healthcare system like? Did you have to use it? Give us a quick peek into that.
Well, for our visa, we had to have medical insurance.
Spanish medical insurance.
Right. So so that process was kind of easy because I just talked to expats online and just saw what were the top choices.
There were like two choices, basically.
Two top choices. And
Mhm.
so we just pick one of those. And as far as the cost, it was, I mean, being Americans, we thought it was super reasonable.
3,000 for a family of 4 for the year with
Wow. And did
no
that
pre. Go
okay?
ahead.
And was that like catastrophic, or did that cover everything, like doctor's
That
visits and
was
medication?
100% covered, no copays, everything is covered.
Wow,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you mentioned Spanish insurance, so it wasn't like an international plan, it was actually like
No.
a Spanish private
Yeah.
insurance.
It
Okay.
had to be, yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's
Private.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was a Spanish company, a Spanish insurance company
Right.
that you got this through.
Right.
Yeah.
And we definitely used it. We used it for regular checkups, but we also used it for some unexpected, mostly with the kids,
All with the kids, yeah.
ER visits.
Oh, wow.
Because at least nothing like life-threatening, but at least from our experience, it's not like the US where there's urgent care. So basically, if you have something that needs to get checked out and you can't get into the doctor, you go to the private hospital that, or the hospital that takes the private insurance. And our
Okay.
experience was
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
We've done the ER, I want to say 3 times.
Mhm.
And from leaving our house, walking down, getting a taxi, going to the hospital ER, talking to a doctor, getting x-rays, going back to the doctor after they examine the x-rays, and then getting back home. It was like a little over an hour maybe for everything.
No.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Wow.
It's easy. You
That's
don't have
crazy.
to obviously pay anything. And the
Didn't-
wait time was never more than 10 minutes maybe. And this is an emergency room.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think
Yeah.
that's one of the big fears that we've heard from people thinking about moving to a more socialized medicine system. And it sounds like you guys had private insurance and you were going to the
Yeah.
private hospital. But
Right.
even those, in our experience in France too, are so much less expensive.
Right.
But
Yeah.
just the idea that you won't be able to get access to care. And I mean, at least, you know, in Spain, from you guys' experience and here in France, we haven't seen that or it's not any different than in the US, right? Like we waited to see the doctor in the US too, because
Was the language a problem at the hospital when y'all went?
It wasn't a problem. We kind of struggled through it. But yeah, we got the point across and it wasn't a big deal.
A lot of the medical care speaks English, or someone might speak English. And if
Yeah.
the kids were with us, it was fine since their Spanish was strong.
Yeah, the doctors usually could speak at least a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, we
And
were
then-
able to do it. So
Yeah. Okay.
Google Translate is like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That can be a lifesaver. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second to, you mentioned visas, and we kind of skipped over that because Americans, we have a privileged passport. I feel like because in the European Union, we pretty much get 90 days with no visa. We can just go visit, no paperwork, no, you just show up and they'll let you stay for 90 days. If you're
Yeah.
going to stay longer than that, you usually need permission from the country. So, and obviously each country is a little different, even within the European Union, with the types of visas they have, what the requirements are. We're only experienced with French visas. What was the visa experience like for you guys? And like, just I mean, maybe not super in depth, but a general idea of like what it was like, how difficult was it to get? What privileges do you have or things you can't do on your visa? Can you just like summarize that a little bit?
Yeah, so we did the non-lucrative visa, which is, I guess, kind of like their retirement visa. So it's non-lucrative. You're not technically supposed to work. You're not
Okay.
supposed to basically take a job from a Spaniard. So I guess the biggest thing with that visa is you need to show a certain amount of money in a bank account. So a lot of families that are doing sabbatical or even, retired people or couples will do the non-lucrative visa. It's not difficult, but it's it's not impossible to get, but it's very detail oriented. Each consulate is different. So there's a lot of steps, a lot of like counting. I mean, maybe like what y'all went through, a lot of counting backwards where you need this by this date. So it's a lot. So some people, they do pay for help. It's definitely doable on your own too. It's a lot.
I guess I'll ask you afterwards if there was any really good resources that you had for that, because we found the same thing with the French system is like, it's all there, but it's just requires a lot of checking boxes and making sure you have documents. And, it's a very detail oriented process, even if it's not super complicated necessarily.
Yeah.
Was that the same thing you guys found?
Yeah.
Right. And there are some things that weren't clear. So I think online expat groups definitely help with that. I think it gets confusing because even in the US, different consulates have different rules. And then of course we did it during COVID, which made it, and during the election. So, and we needed things from DC. So that kind of made it
even, the government was shut down basically at that time.
So that kind of made it even more complicated. One of the biggest tips I got was if you need help with something, with the visa process, with the State Department, to contact your basically your congressional person or your senator for help. So we did utilize that and it worked fantastic.
Yeah.
So
that's a great tip. I would never think about doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we needed our it was our FBI background check rushed, and somebody told me to contact, your senator or your congressional person.
We didn't need it rushed. We just needed them to do something.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, after she contacted the senator, I think.
And I just emailed.
Yeah, I think.
And it was probably an intern that responded and.
Yeah, but I think we got a call from the person in DC. She was like, okay, what does your envelope look like? This just moved to the top of the list.
Yeah, the next day.
We're doing it right now.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so, I don't know what would have happened. It would have been months probably if we hadn't done that. So.
Yeah.
But that was during COVID. I'm sure it's a lot better now, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. And I know in France, because of COVID, they actually put a lot more things online that didn't used to be. So the process here is actually a lot easier now because during all that shutdown, they actually did improve it and find ways to do less in-person stuff. So it's actually
I want to say that may be how it is for Spain now, I think, at least in the renewal process.
Yeah. It's more the renewal process here too. So okay, so kind of staying in the realm of the US, when you were there, like coming for a sabbatical or a long stay trip, like what did you guys do with your house and your stuff? Did you have an idea of how long you might stay in Spain? Like tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we didn't plan to ever go back to Houston permanently, so we did sell our house. Sold our cars and basically got rid of as much stuff as possible. Some stuff is held on by the family, which is mostly keepsakes and a lot of kids' toys. But other than that, just kind of minimalizing just as much as possible.
Yeah.
How much did you bring with you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, so we're kind of extreme in that. So we only had carry-on. We didn't have any check bags. So we had like,
wow,
I guess the equivalent of like small suitcases, but they were backpacks.
Right.
Yeah.
So just clothes and iPads, and that's pretty much it.
A few toys for the kids.
Yeah, a few toys.
Yeah.
Man.
Nice work.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Because we did not, we had 3 checked bags and 3 carry-on bags and each a backpack. So,
Yeah.
I mean, some of that was one whole suitcase was like cat stuff to get us here because I don't know, we're going to make, we haven't, I don't know when, but we're going to make a video about getting our cat here. That was his whole own adventure.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he had one whole suitcase of diabetic supplies. So I will say, but still, yeah, that's impressive.
So can you just talk for a minute about how you guys chose Granada specifically? And then within Granada, how did you find a place to live?
Yeah, because you hadn't been there before, right? You were coming from the States
No,
and had
never.
not been
Sight
there.
unseen, totally.
Wow. It's amazing.
Well, Erik actually picked Granada. I was too busy with the kids and working and teaching full time. So I let him take the reins on that. But basically we looked a lot at climate and the size of the city. It's a university city, so that brings in international, that brings in culture. It has access to the mountains and the beach. So I don't know, about 30 minutes from the mountains, about an hour from the beach.
Yeah, walkable, good public transport.
Yeah,
a strong expat community as well. Yeah, and I think I always look for cities with at least, say, 250,000 people, and I feel like you can kind of have like a big city feel and also like not overwhelming at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and that was a good fit.
The Alhambra.
Yeah, it had the Alhambra, which is
so
amazing.
pretty.
I mean, we could, well, you guys have seen it. You can go up to the roof and.
I like it better than Versailles.
Yeah.
I think it's more
It's an
impressive than
incredible place.
Versailles.
That's nice,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how we picked Granada, and then we found the place originally through Airbnb. This was all before COVID, and we kind of just booked. We found it, and we kind of just booked it. I think one night for a year. So in this process, you kind of, as you go through it, you are taking a lot of leaps of faith along the way. You need, if you're going to do it, which definitely, if it's on your mind, do it because you won't regret it, but stick with your plan because you're going to be taking leaps of faith, like booking an apartment sight unseen. Even with the visa process, like paying for health insurance before anything has been approved. Stuff like that. So anyway, so we did it on Airbnb, COVID hit, and so we had to cancel it and everything. And then we got kind of familiar with the host. We called her, or she called us, and she said, "Hey, when do y'all think y'all can come?" And we kind of just guessed April 2021, which worked out good. And then we decided just to go, or she offered to do the lease outside of Airbnb because cut out that middleman, and it made it cheaper for us. And I think it made it better for her as well.
And it made it easier with visa with what we needed.
Because then she provided all the documentation for that.
That was huge.
So we really lucked out with that because she ended up being amazing. I mean, I think we consider her as family at this point. We'd love to keep in touch and go back there.
One thing to go back to picking a city is we did rule out some places in Spain because of language. So the kids would have learned a different language in school. So we ruled out Barcelona, Valencia because of that. So we thought it was too difficult for them to take on their regional language.
Oh, like they wouldn't have learned Spanish.
Yeah.
It's basically a regional, it's a little different. It's close, but it's a little different. And we thought it just might be too much.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, actually, because isn't there an area that speaks like, is it Catalonia?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's Barcelona, I think Valencia.
So that's one reason why we just decided not to do some of those areas. And then we love Malaga, but I kind of thought, well, there might be too much English, or Madrid, there might be too much English. So kind of the language aspect, we did think about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. And that came into our decision too, to be somewhere where we really didn't have English as much of an option. Because it does progress your second language skills much faster.
You brought up school. I think that's a really good topic. Can you just talk a little more, like maybe just start at the beginning? How did you enroll in a school? How did you find it?
That's
that was
Tara, yeah.
that was really stressful for me. I was really worried about that. And in Grenada, at least, a lot of expats go to the same primary school. So at first I thought, oh, I guess they're going to go to that school. But then I dug around more and I met another expat online, and I got to talking to her. It seemed like years because of COVID. I mean, I talked to her for a long time online. So really trusted her opinion, and she recommended a different school. It's a concertado, which I don't know if France has something similar, but it's basically a semi-private school. So it's technically a Catholic school, but there's no tuition, and you can opt out of religion if you want to, which I don't think there's anything like it in the US. Usually private schools or religious schools, there's tuition. So she recommended it. She said the kids get to learn outside. There's a view at the Alhambra. She really pushed it, and that's kind of why I ended up choosing that school, and it worked out really great. Another reason is it had basically
very few expats.
So
the kids were kind of thrown to the wolves.
Right.
That's kind of what we wanted.
There's a lot more expats now, but our first year, they were basically the only expats. So I had a feeling if there were other expats, they would have, gravitated towards them and just kind of relied on English. So
I can confirm that because we went from a very regional public school last year, which we had a great experience with. And Juliana had like this little group of French friends. They're so solid. They still see each other, but we moved out of the range of that school. And so she's transferred to a school where there's like a little group of expats, and it's like it's just normal. You gravitate towards people who speak your mother tongue. And so she still has French friends, but definitely I can see like that's who she's really forming bonds with this year. So I can confirm that probably would have been the case. Yeah. Because we're seeing it now. But at least she's already got a strong base. So it's, and she's still doing school all day in French. So how was the adjustment for your kids? Because this is another question that's a big one, right? I mean, your kids are, they're not, I know sometimes people think about going when your kids are like in kindergarten or first grade, right? They're so young. And they're not actually having to do a lot of academic work yet, but you guys as kids are older. How old were they when you guys moved?
They were 8 and 10.
Yeah.
And it was during COVID. So I think our situation is a little different than if we came like straight from not COVID.
Right.
But I think we really lucked out. They were all in, really excited about the adventure. And I think we really lucked out with their transition. So we arrived to Spain in April of that year, and so they had school. Spain still had school till the end of June, but I didn't think it made sense it was still COVID, just throw them in. So we did enroll them for September. Yeah. And so we just,
although the school would have taken them in April. I think they were like, why are we waiting until September?
We just kind of traveled and schooled on our own and kind of, really got used to Grenada, and they transitioned pretty well. I mean, it wasn't like all rainbows and unicorns, but I mean, just overall, really well. And the teachers were really supportive with the obstacles we did have. I mean, I think Max really surprised us. I mean, I think his first year in Spain was maybe his best school year ever.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, and then Sadie had some more obstacles, which is not surprising because she only had kinder, and basically first grade was COVID for Spanish.
She had way less Spanish. She had 2 years less Spanish than Max.
So but the teacher was, super supportive, and the teacher actually, we left out, she was bilingual. She was the English teacher.
Oh, wow. Sometimes things fall into place.
And she made a really good Spanish friend that year. So, it worked out. I think just kind of knowing what I've seen from other families, just kind of, I mean, you can't predict everything, but just kind of knowing your kids and what obstacles there may be, and just kind of preparing for that.
And what goals you have too. If you don't really care about the kids learning the language, then maybe put them in the school with all the expats, and it'll be smoother for them, I guess. But it just depends. Be honest with yourself when you're going through the process, and like, what do we want to get out of this?
And what do our Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a huge thing you just like pinned down that we talked about in another video, is like figuring out what you want out of this experience, because
Yeah.
it's gonna drive, like, do you live in a big city? Do you live in a, village? What school do you choose for your kids? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to decide that early on, I think, because if not, I don't think you would have a satisfying of it experience if you're not
Yeah, and I
really
think
clear
you
on those
need
goals.
to, and I think anyone considering this, obviously this is probably the way they think, but you need to totally come with an open mind. Be open to, there's going to be differences. Okay, you're not
Yeah.
going to have a washer probably. You're
Yeah.
almost certainly not going to have a garbage disposal, and your dryer, if you have one, is not going to dry your clothes. So
God,
just,
so
just
That's
true.
kind
a
of take these
common
things,
problem in Europe, is the dryers that don't actually dry.
Yeah.
take
Yeah,
these
yeah.
things in stride, laugh at them,
Yeah.
learn from them, embrace them. And if you have that mindset, then I think you'll have no regrets.
I think that makes it easier. And then if there's something that's like really, really important to you, then, and if it's something like, I don't know, a dishwasher, then maybe you need to find a place with a dishwasher.
That's possible, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So
But
maybe
you don't need one.
you definitely don't need one, but maybe just kind of knowing priorities, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's super true. That's great advice.
Yeah, that is. And that's something, I think that's another, like we talked about, maybe kind of trying to understand what you want out of this trip and what's
Mhm.
important before you go in.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff you have a choice. You can find that stuff before
Sure.
you leave.
Mhm.
But I would agree with you. A lot of it isn't as important and maybe as you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you're without it.
Yeah.
So kind of going down the same line, maybe thinking about these last 2 years, what's been the hardest part?
Mhm.
Hopefully it wasn't the dishwasher and dryer, but
That's been the best part. No, man, I hate to say that there hasn't been really a hard part. But there hasn't for me, really. I mean, I've kind of been on board with everything from the get-go. I don't know.
I mean, I think for me, distance between family can be challenging, but I mean, luckily we live in the age of FaceTime. So I think, I mean, all the other stuff, like as far as material things, I think we've been pretty flexible.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, I mean, language, I mean, for us adults can be more challenging, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't say anything's been hard. Sounds weird to say that because it seems like everything would be hard, but again, if you just keep an open mind and, like Tara said, be flexible, I don't think anything's been hard, really, as long as you're.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
have
it
that
sounds
mind.
like, to me, it's that you set your expectations, that there would be unexpected things and that you
Sure.
have to be flexible, and that's part of what makes this an adventure. I told Jason that one day when we were like frustrated with something, I was like, I realized the thing that makes this an interesting and fun adventure is that we don't know what's going to happen. And also sometimes that feels stressful, but it is also the part of, like, if you don't want to have any of that, don't leave home. Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like part of the package. So it really is partly like how you go into it with, like, those kind of ideas and expectations.
Yeah.
I see that. Couple last logistical questions. Obviously you guys are like mid-career, have a young family. I mean, what has it been like to leave work? How did you decide to, like, how did you fund this time? Like, just share a little bit about what that's been like.
That has been great. Just like this whole adventure, it was all planned well in advance. We did kind of, I guess you can call it early retire or fire, whatever you want to say. And so we did that in 2021 and haven't missed work since then. So I think most people who do this will have just a lump sum of cash set aside that they're going to pull from to live the year, or whatever, however long they're going to do their adventure. But for us, we just pull a small percentage from our investments each year, and so that's like kind of the cash that we live off of. And as far as round numbers for a year in at least Granada, Spain, for a family of 4, I think you can easily do it for, assuming the exchange rates stay about, within reason.
Right.
For 40,000 or less. That includes your medical, your housing, everything. Obviously, you could do it for more than that, depending on how much you want to maybe travel around. A lot of people, if they're only doing it for a year, they're going to travel more.
Yeah.
We knew that it was kind of a long-term thing for us, so we probably travel a little bit less than a lot of the expats that come, because we know we have more time to do that. We can spread it out more. So it just depends. But I think, yeah, you could definitely do it for 40,000 or less for a family of 4 and live comfortably and good.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys were in the center of an amazing city. You had 2-bedroom apartment. It included utilities, right? And then you didn't have school tuition. So your kids were in like a private, but it didn't cost school. And then you had private insurance. So and you didn't have a car, but that was paying for public transportation, just to kind of give people a round. And that's amazing. I mean, when you think about like, I think at this point, it's pretty hard to live in the US well for $40,000 a year. It's not easy, especially with healthcare costs. So, and the other, I just want to touch on, like, for anyone listening who is not familiar with the term FIRE, it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. You can Google it. It is a whole rabbit hole to go down. It's just how you kind of save and manage your money for long-term investment and living. And it's fascinating. But it is like a few years in the planning. So you can kind of investigate that. Is there any resources around that actually that you guys really like? Because
I guess I started on a blog that a lot of people start on, which is Mr. Money Mustache. And that will lead you down the rabbit hole to other blogs.
It does. Totally. Okay.
Yeah. I'll link that in the description.
Yeah.
People can go there if they want to investigate it further.
Yeah. Sure. So, and the thing I want to note about that too is that, like, yes, it does take planning to be at that point at the age that you guys are at. But I also think this is something that people can do. You have to have living costs no matter what, no matter where you are. Right. Yeah. And so I do think it's like something sometimes you have to be creative and you do have to plan for a little while, but it's figure outable, even if you're not at the point where you're ready to early retire, you can. And
it's easier actually to live in a place like Spain because all your costs are fixed. You don't have we didn't have a car, so there's no unexpected expenses there. Medical is all covered. So no matter what, there's no unexpected coming from there. And we rented a place, so we're not paying to fix anything there. So everything was a fixed cost, which makes it a lot easier to plan for, I think.
To plan.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah, totally.
So what's the best thing you've eaten on your journey so far?
Because we always talk about food.
Yeah.
For me in Spain is the produce. Fresh produce is unbelievable, but I think Tara may have a different opinion. I don't know.
I don't know. Tomatoes are fantastic.
It sounds ridiculous. Yeah. So
when we first
buying like produce and like being from Texas, like an HEB or a Kroger's, it's kind of tasteless. And maybe you don't realize it at the time, but once you get to a place like southern Spain, I mean, the flavor is just ridiculous and all these things. So
when we first moved to Spain, and I'm not even the type of person that can eat the same thing every day at all. I had tomatoes on a baguette like every day for months until I finally switched, but they were so good.
The bread too.
The bread, well, maybe not French bread, but
these are boring answers for most people. Probably,
probably a boring answer. But the produce, and I was never a cherry fan, but then cherry season, I was like,
we had cherries when we visited y'all.
Yeah,
they were amazing.
And the price is insane. Cherries in the US, or you could pay like $10 a pound or something.
Yeah.
Here, I would go to the same market or the same produce stand, and she would just especially if I brought a kid with me, she would give me free stuff, like a free bag of cherries or a free bag of figs.
God.
Yeah. I would be like, so
yeah, that's amazing. That doesn't actually, I know you said oh, this is kind of a boring answer. I don't think so, because that's amazed us too. I love strawberries. So in the US, we bought strawberries. We bought tons of them when they're in season. Yeah. But since we've been here, I feel like it's the first time I've actually tasted strawberries. I think they're just different varieties and they get them to market much quicker.
They were my least favorite berry in the US, but here it's totally different. They're so good.
They're just so flavorful, so sweet. And that was kind of a big surprise for us too. I was like, whoa, The strawberries are even different. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone coming from the US, I would say the quality of food is way better outside of the US.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that part at all.
Yeah, I think it's easier to eat healthier because I mean the produce is so good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think so. There's so much less, there's just less, it's easier to eat like whole foods, I think.
Right.
Like, because especially if you're shopping at markets, there's still processed food, there's still fast food around, but it's just less of like part of, at least where we're at, part of the culture. So it's always easier to go with the flow of where you're at. What has surprised you the most?
I think what surprised me the most is I think the kids really transitioned really well.
That's going to be based on age big time then. Like if we did it now, it would not be easy at all.
So I think how well Max did surprise me. He's more of an introvert and going from his security bubble and the people he knew to 100% Spanish. He really thrived. I think shortly before COVID, Spanish clicked for him, which definitely helped. But I just think the kids embracing the adventure and how well they did in school, and just loved it and loved the culture, the Spanish culture. And Sadie took flamenco and she loved it. I mean, at first she didn't want to do it, but then she loved it so much she didn't want to do ballet. I mean, I think that really was a great surprise for how well that they did.
Yeah, and also I'll add more for the adults is the expat community, wherever you go, if there is one, makes it so much easier to make friends with other adults. Like, I guess it seems like it's harder and harder as you get older to make friends or to come with new friends. And it's almost like you have built-in friends right away because you have people who have common outlooks and you have so much in common with them. You're in the same situation. So I guess it surprised me a little bit, but I enjoyed that part of it very much.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a surprise our second year. Our first year was a little different since it was COVID. People were isolating a little more. They're masked pretty much that whole first school year. But a lot of new expats came the second year, which was I guess kind of a good surprise. A little bit negative, I guess, because you're kind of relying on other English speakers or whatever. But
I enjoyed it.
It was great. I mean,
Oh,
and
awesome.
a good like built-in support system, like if you have questions or need things or
we've found that too, even though since Juliana's going to school, like being plugged in some way, like her being in a local school helped connect us with local people who are French and live locally. But like I have heard some people like, oh, don't hang out with other expats, like you're never going to get in the culture, but the reality is like you need friends and people who are going through similar experiences that I mean, my French friends sometimes are just shocked by the whole immigration process here. They have no idea. They were born with a French passport, right? You need people who understand these things. So I think that's a good point too.
Yeah, it's an excellent resource. I mean,
you want both.
There's a whole community of people that have
want both. You want
doing what they've figured these things out already. And you don't need them, but it's just an excellent resource for you.
So is there anything that, like, if you were planning this now, that you think, oh, I would do that a little differently? Is there anything?
I don't think we have any regrets or anything we change. I mean, we're traveling right now, and so we're going to do this. We plan to do this again, the visa process, and return to Spain. So one thing we're thinking about is, do we want to land in the same place? So we have been thinking about what we need in a place. So would we like a more international airport?
Well, closer by at least.
Granada has a airport, but it only goes to certain places.
It's probably like
so we are kind of thinking about maybe the size of the city or what we need. Do we need more culture? How do schools look as the kids get older? So there are definitely some that we're thinking about, because I think secondary school, what they need might look different than what we got in primary school. So there's a lot to talk about, definitely.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, that I mean, before you arrive, if you're going to take a journey, you don't have to figure everything out long term, because you're going to have a chance to maybe make a different decision. Especially if you're renting, and it makes it easy to move around. I mean, we were in one place for a year, and we had a whole year to kind of figure out what happens next. And we were able, it was much easier than trying to get information in the US. So we're half an hour from where we were a year ago. And it was really easy to find information once we were here to just make a more informed decision for you.
Sure.
Yeah, you just know more. And that's a good place to kind of our last question to wrap up. Like, what do you want people who are considering a sabbatical, long stay travel, especially doing this with, maybe their kids, like, what do you want them to know? What do you think?
I think if it's something that you are considering, then do whatever you need to do to make it happen, because you won't regret it.
100%. I don't think you'll regret it. I think, I don't know, I'm a planner and I've seen other families come in, and I definitely think that thinking through things as much as possible helps. Like Erik said, be
realistic,
be flexible, be kind of open-minded, really think about who your kids are, what they need, or even the adults, what they need. Does your kid need a lot of activities right away? Do they need social connections? Just all kind of those parts. Do your kids, can they be okay in the same bedroom? Would it be better for the whole family if they're in different bedrooms? Just kind of all those parts, I think, helps. Do you need a place that has access to outdoors? I mean, it's just it's a lot to think about, but I think being prepared definitely helps. Being prepared and open-minded, and things might have to pivot.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Oh man, this has been, there's been just so many gems in this conversation that I think for other people who are like, wherever you are in the path, thinking about it and the possibility, and trying to decide like if this is something really for your family, and also just like general planning and logistics. So thank you so much for spending the time.
I think really embracing it. I see, I get the frustrations. Things are different than the US or the UK or wherever people might come from, but just kind of really embracing the cultural difference. I mean, places close, they take siestas, or it's okay to sit for coffee for 3 hours. This is what people do. I think that helps to embrace the differences, and it's actually good for you to to try new things. So I think that can help. Kind of that mindset of, I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to be present. I'm going to be here.
Oh, that's an awesome point, because I do think sometimes, like, because all at least for us, all we knew was our life in the US before we come. And so naturally your inclination is to, like, even though you're doing this to have a different experience, your inclination is to like recreate your US life. Like, you can't help it. It's just because it's what you know. And so that's an awesome point to just sort of like land and start to look around and absorb the culture, and like, okay, this is what they do here. And I'm just going to like sort of allow that to be like part of how my life looks, because that's why I'm doing this. Because I agree, like adjusting to certain things around like eating schedules and even just the length of time everything takes, that it is totally normal to email someone and wait for 3 or 4 days to get a response. like nothing's wrong. It's just not, it's just the way it is. Like, there's very few emergencies in the French countryside. Because you're right. Like,
to just say yes to opportunities. Like, I think our life was a little more fixed in the US, and everyone's busy. Like, if you want to see friends, you need to schedule 6 months out. But I think
so true.
I think in Spain, like, what if someone said at 8:30 p.m., like, let's go grab drinks and tapas? Like, at first, like, my personality is like, I didn't know about this, but it's like, let's say yes. Like, what else do I have going on? I mean, 9 out of 10, I'm not going to regret it. So just, kind of embrace the flexibility. That's a lot different.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because that's another thing I hadn't thought about. The same thing. We were going to drop off a thank you gift to someone who had done something really nice for Juliana at school. And I sent her a text, and she was like, oh, I'm not there right now, because we were going by their office. She's like, we're at home, but do you want to go to coffee? And I was like in 2 weeks? Like, I literally did not understand. And she's like, no, like I can be there in half an hour. Let's go to, this like little place downtown. I was like, and I had the same feeling like, that wasn't my plan for this afternoon, which sounds so ridiculous. I know, but it's just like, it was. And so I was like, okay, I'll be there. But it was, just like a change in mindset.
And those take time. And that's why anyone who's thinking about doing this, it may not be possible for everyone, but if you can do more than 1 year, for me, I think year one was great. Year 2 was even better. Just because you're settled in and you're more familiar with those kind of things.
I think it takes, I've talked to other families, it definitely takes like kind of a mental adjustment for a year and so many changes. And I know some people have to go back to their job, but like if they can be flexible, I think it's great.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, that rings true.
Yeah. Okay. And I have to give you guys credit too. When we said we were going to do this for a year, we actually had a video chat and you guys were like, no, you're going to be here 2 years. Everybody, once they do their year, wants to stay a second year if you can. And it was so true. We knew pretty soon on. We're like, we need another year. So I have to give you credit. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think this was really informative and fun for us and for our viewers. And if you have any questions or comments or thoughts on your experiences as well, please leave them in the comments below.
Yeah, we'll respond. And I think it's helpful to have conversations about these things because it's not something everyone does. So that's why we're here for this.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see you guys soon, and good luck with all your travels this year. It's exciting. We'll have to interview you next year once you're back in Spain again about what this year was like.
We gotta figure out where we're gonna meet up next.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I know.
Yeah.